Welcome everybody logging in to our latest installment of our Innovations in Language Assessment webinar series. I'm Sophie Wadzak, Senior Communications Manager for the Duolingo English test. It's nice to have you all here. I'll just say a few housekeeping words as we get started before I hand it over to our host, Anthony. As many of you know, I know a lot of you are repeat visitors to our webinar series. Thank you for coming. We're so happy to have you. This will be recorded that you'll be able to see it on YouTube after we're finished. We'll post that link and send it out via email. If you guys want to watch it again, that's great. The chat is here if you want to say hi, make comments. But if you have questions for our speaker at the end, please, throughout the webinar, you can submit those via the Q&A function that you'll see in the bottom toolbar of your Zoom screen. And that way we'll be able to have a Q&A session after this speaker is finished. You won't be able to turn on your cameras or microphones, but we're very happy to see you here. And yes, please say hi in the chat. We're greeting you from Duolingo headquarters in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where I'm sad to say it's very cold and snowy, but better than maybe better in some other places. I'm just going to give people a few more minutes to log on. Hi, everybody. It's nice to see you there. And I'm going to say it again for those who've logged on since I said it before. Yes, this webinar will be recorded. You'll be able to find it on the Duolingo English Tests Assessment Research Webinar YouTube channel, which I'll link in the chat in just a moment. And we'll share it out via the same channels where we shared out the registration link for this email. Okay, Anthony, are you ready to introduce our speaker? Yes. Okay, here's my colleague, Anthony Coonan, who is here to introduce today's speaker.
Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, or good evening. Welcome to the webinar hosted by Duolingo English Test, titled Innovations in Language Assessment. We've had 8 speakers so far. Erik Voss, today's speaker, is the 9th, and it's on a very hot topic, as you can see from our registration numbers and from our zoomed-in participant numbers. I'll say a few words about Erik and about what he's going to say, what he's going to talk about. Erik has a Ph.D. from Iowa State University, and under the supervision of Professor Carol Chappell. He's now assistant professor at Teachers College, Columbia University. He's on several boards, on the ILTA and the Midwest MWALT board. He's an associate editor for Language Assessment Quarterly and the editor-in-chief of the New York TESOL Journal. And he teaches many courses at Teachers College: Corpus Linguistics, Computational Linguistics, and TESOL classroom practices are among the many he teaches. He also hosts an annual conference called AIRO, or IRO. Erik will say more about this. This is a conference devoted to language assessment and technology. Very well attended last year. I had the privilege of attending it. Erik is also a frequent speaker at many conferences worldwide. He's also traveled, to many places. And his recent, his new appearances will be at Belfast for EALTA and hopefully for LTRC in Innsbruck. And, if you get a chance to catch him in one of these venues, please do. Today, Erik is going to talk about a very exciting topic for us and for all of us in the field of language assessment. We're looking at the applications of artificial intelligence to language assessment. We are all influenced by it, and we want to know what Erik's take is on this important topic. So over to you, Erik. Thank you for accepting to speak.
Thank you very much. Let me start my slides. Appreciate it. All right. My slides okay? Good. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Sophie. Thank you for inviting me to this webinar. I'm happy to be here today. And today I'd like to talk about AI applications in language assessment. And this is a very broad topic. So today I'll be talking about a few of the applications and the research that has been published in language testing journals. I'll be wearing my hat as a futurist, but also my hat as a social pragmatist, looking at the challenges and issues that remain to be solved. So my presentation today will follow this roadmap. I will first talk about the question, what is artificial intelligence? And then we'll look at applications of artificial intelligence in language assessment, more specifically in writing assessment, speaking assessment, sign language assessment, automated item generation, and assessment security. And then at the end, I'll give some comments on future directions, and then we'll have some time for discussion at the end. So please put any questions you have in the chat or the Q&A as we go along, and we'll get to them at the end. So to begin, let's look back about 60 years to a publication by Alice Page about the ability of a computer to score essays. So a few things strike me about this article. First of all, the title, The Imminence of Grading Essays by Computer. The author probably intended the meaning to be that this will happen very soon, when the article was describing a system that had just been created. I was a little concerned over the word imminence, as it holds a negative connotation for me. Nonetheless, the article was framing the ability of computers to complete a human task as a good thing. The introduction to the article also frames essay grading as a back-breaking burden for teachers, and that Mr. Page was a refugee from being an English teacher. So this frames the situation as designing a computer program to do tasks that humans do not like doing. And finally, the result of this first machine grader will be indistinguishable from those of experts. So experts being teachers who grade essays. Well, it sounds like the task of grading essays was already completed at this time in the 60s, but not so fast. There are many different writing tasks, many different educational contexts that require more sophisticated grading and feedback that are still being developed today. So in 2024, we're using AI technology for a much wider variety of tasks that emulate human actions. In this image, we can see a computer simulation of a human, and the goal is to create a digital human that resembles the original as closely as possible, both visually and verbally.
Fulfill this desire to interact with you and your desire to build a community. And there's a lot of interesting questions around that. And that's obviously, it's not just in the metaverse. I think we'd want to make that work across all the messaging platforms, WhatsApp and Messenger and Instagram Direct. But there's certainly a version of that where if you could have an avatar version of yourself in the metaverse that people can interact with, and you could define that sort of an AI version, where
So an important question that we need to answer with each one of these applications is why we are using AI. What human task are we trying to replicate? Or are we actually trying to replicate a human, to create a digital human? So this brings us to the question of what is artificial intelligence? This has been a buzzword in the media. It's replaced our previous term technology. It's true that most companies are rushing to add AI applications into apps, websites, back-end analyses. They're using the term AI to attract customers with a wide range of applications. And the idea of intelligence is still debated. One could say that applications we have today are not actually intelligent. The Turing test is the original so-called test for artificial intelligence. So the image that you see on the slide shows a human on the left, and on the right, we see a computer and a human completing the same task. And so if the human on the left cannot tell whether the task was completed by a human or a computer, then it's passed this Turing test. This is a sign of intelligence according to this test, but is this really intelligence? So what degree of intelligence is needed for a computer to complete a task that a human does? For example, if we walk into a room and the light comes on, do we consider this form of artificial intelligence? A sensor that detected movement and turned the lights on, as if a human was sitting in the room waiting for someone to come in. So our current understanding of AI includes some aspect of learning by the computer. One definition of artificial intelligence is that it can deal with new problems once it has learned the general principle. Okay, that's important. The light detection system has able to do that. Another definition alludes to cognitive processing of some type of learning and thinking, the capacity for an information processing system to adapt to its environment while operating with insufficient knowledge and resources. So this definition suggests that a light sensor would not be AI since it was programmed with one specific task and had enough knowledge to complete that task. So the last definition would be that the main goal for implementation of AI in language assessment is to replicate tasks that have traditionally been done by a human. And a working definition would include reference to a replication of human intelligence as implemented through computer systems. So let's keep this in mind as we look at the next slides. Initially, when a computer completes a task previously only done by a human, we as humans are very impressed. Many of the current AI applications make us feel this way when we start using them. We've asked chatbots to write poems in the style of the Beatles or an image in the style of a famous artist. The ability for a chatbot to produce text in many different languages, that's pretty impressive. But we also have other emotions when we find that the AI tool doesn't exactly do what we want it to. It doesn't create what we want it to create. And this is due in part to technical limitations of the computer system. However, another reason is the inability to tell the computer exactly what we want it to do. So humans are still learning to interact with computers and hopefully control a computer rather than allowing computers to control us. So again, hopefully controlling the computers rather than allowing computers to control humans. So this is where we are today. We want computers to replicate human, to help humans, to think like humans, to look like humans, sound like humans. Yet we are afraid of computers taking away our jobs, taking away jobs from humans, afraid of computers helping humans cheat, not trusting computers to complete jobs as well as humans. So I guess our question is, what is our ultimate goal in producing these applications? It's also the humans who are creating these applications. They are programming the computers to do human tasks. Most people are experimenting with generative AI right now, asking a chatbot to do many, many different tasks, to generate text, images, video, build websites, analyze data. And we're finding that performance of these computer programs is only as good as, number one, the data it was trained on or has access to, and number two, how well the human can instruct the computer to do the task. For example, with generative AI, longer, more specific contextualized prompts with models produce much better results than a short command. We still have ideas in our heads that computers will only learn through our text and speech input, at least for now. So technology and AI applications are only tools. So it's important to remember that the computer itself does not have a philosophy of teaching, learning, and assessment. However, the professionals who develop AI applications and conduct research on the use of applications do. Sometimes we may think that these generative models have some type of philosophy, but they're really just reiterating what someone else has already created. Humans are still responsible for how AI is developed and used. An early approach to programming computers that could understand human language was in the area of natural language processing. Using computer code, programmers developed algorithms to turn human language into numerical data that a computer could process. There are two distinct approaches to accomplish this. First of all, as you see on the left, there's symbolic natural language processing. This is a rule-based system that coded the linguistic characteristics, such as grammar, into rules that a computer could identify. An obvious problem with this approach are the many exceptions to the rules or linguistic variations, too many to hard code and program. The second approach is statistical or probabilistic natural language processing, based on the notion of frequency and patterns or phraseology repetition in human language. Algorithms began to predict a word, for example, based on its use in a particular context. This is the foundation for how large language models we use today are trained. Large language models, also called foundation models, like the one used to develop ChatGPT, for example, used a more complex algorithm, but are based on the same principle of predicting the next word in a sequence. So this distinction in approaches illustrates a shift in how computers have been programmed. Traditionally, computer programming consisted of providing input to a computer and writing complex algorithms called functions. You see the F with the X in the parentheses as a function. The functions would result then in an output that may or may not be what the human desired. So our function here would be add A plus B, or some form of natural language processing to produce a score for an essay. We give the computer the input and create the algorithm to create the output. Modern approaches to programming computers, excuse me, instructs the computer to learn on its own. Instead of creating the functions that instruct the computer exactly what to do, the programmer designs the algorithm, adjusts its weights and calculations until it can approach the desired output. So in this case, we provide the input and the output, and the computer figures out how to calculate the input to produce the output, the desired output. This is the ability for a computer to learn, which has led to advances in what we call artificial intelligence today. So artificial intelligence, as I mentioned, is a widely used term that includes many applications. The ability of computers to adapt to new tasks is known as machine learning. This is a subfield of artificial intelligence, and deep learning is a subfield of machine learning, which uses more complex algorithms to learn from the input data. On the right of this slide, you can see one type of a machine learning approach called supervised learning. And in this example, the computer is given data that is labeled, red circles and blue squares in this case. As output on the right, the computer is instructed to detect which is which. And then, given all of the labeled data, the computer identifies the patterns and characteristics on its own in order to distinguish between the two shapes. And this approach can be done with shapes, it can be done with text, audio, images, many different types of data. So this brings us to our next section, artificial intelligence in language assessment. And for this section, I looked at AI research that was published in 2 language testing journals since they started publishing. The 2 journals were Language Testing and Language Assessment Quarterly. And there are many key words that could be used to identify applications of artificial intelligence. However, today, I'd like to share the results for just 3 keywords: artificial intelligence, deep learning, and machine learning. The first keyword is the umbrella term, and the other 2 are used to describe the ability of computers to learn and replicate human tasks. So looking at the articles that were published using any of these terms will give us an idea of how AI applications are presented in the publications. So the figure you see on your screen right now shows results for published articles that mention one of these 3 key words. The results are presented in 4 different time periods. While artificial intelligence is an umbrella term, machine learning and deep learning describe the approach to the modern approaches to artificial intelligence. So we can see from the results that artificial intelligence was part of the research literature before 2010 and throughout all of these time periods. During the next 2 time periods, we see 6 publications, and then 2020 to the present, which was around 2023, we see a jump in the use of the term artificial intelligence. And remember that ChatGPT was introduced to the public on November 30th of 2022. At this time, the term machine learning occurred in many more publications than previous time periods. So deep learning was not a term that was much used in the literature. Only 2 articles during 2015 and 2019 discussed this type of machine learning. It's surprising that deep learning doesn't appear more in the last time period up through 2023. However, I have a feeling that we'll see many more published articles using all 3 of these terms in the future as we explain more clearly how the applications are built. So let's look a little bit more specifically at the topics that were referred to in these articles. And for artificial intelligence, we see that artificial intelligence was describing the efforts to program computers to think and mimic human understanding of language through information processing, and identifying linguistic features that would resemble a human's evaluation of writing and speech performance. We also see artificial intelligence used in reference to automated speech recognition and automated scoring. These are both mimicking human tasks necessary for scoring speech and writing performance. In the last year, 2023, however, we start to see new topics emerge. So rather than mimicking a human test rater, we see research related to test design to develop a human digital interlocutor for speaking assessment. This type of technology would change the way that a test taker interacts with a computer during a language assessment. And consequently, then, we see publications questioning the construct definition when AI technology is introduced. So in this section, publications on artificial intelligence focused on mimicking human tasks. The second term, machine learning, was used in publications looking at the quality of speech and writing. Again, as a rater, what features would be important for the computer to identify in speech and writing that would replicate a human rater's evaluation of linguistic performance, for both assigning a rating and for providing feedback on the written performance. Later, in 2021, 2023, we start to see research on using computer technology in innovative ways to expand the construct and collect more information about the test taker performance. For example, recording the way test takers type using keystroke logs would provide more information about the writing process. This type of data collection goes beyond mimicking a human rater and asking the computer to do something a human would find difficult or very time-consuming, potentially impossible. The construct definition was augmented once again in a publication looking at ways of including non-verbal behavior for scoring speech performance. This is not possible with previous technology. The data collection would mimic a human more than the current speech assessments with computer technology. Humans process information with their eyes as well as their ears when communicating, so it makes sense to include this type of data collection. The last category, deep learning, focused on automated speech recognition. Other technologies that we should see appearing in publications would reference large language models, generative AI, computer vision. All of these are techniques that are based on deep learning approaches. So now let's take a closer look at applications of artificial intelligence in writing assessment. Automated writing systems are usually defined as either scoring systems that provide a single score or rating, and evaluation systems that provide more diagnostic feedback on the quality of the writing. The underlying processes may be similar with different output. There are also different contexts and purposes for scoring or evaluation. We saw at the beginning of this presentation the research on scoring classroom essays by Page in the 1960s. The next iteration is large-scale automated essay scoring for both L1 and L2 writing performance, such as with Intelligent Essay Assessor and E-Rater. These are applications tailored to be more there are also applications tailored to be more specific in their feedback, such as iAid, Intelligent Academic Discourse Evaluator, which provides feedback on rhetorical move analysis in research writing, developed by Elena Kotos. And also, we're starting to see more applications for languages other than English, such as the machine scoring system for the presentational writing component of the Apple test in Spanish. Most systems have been implemented in high-stakes context because of the resources needed to develop such systems. Low-stakes classroom-based essay scoring would be very welcome by many teachers, but it is not easy for most language teachers to develop their own automated scoring systems. The research now on using ChatGPT and other available large language models to score essays has mushroomed in the past couple of years. However, most of these experiments do not succeed with models that are not familiar with the assessment context or users who are not educated well enough to interact with computers to produce the desired results. Free AI tools available to most teachers are not large and sophisticated enough to mimic these human tasks yet. Deep learning approaches are improving and starting to replace traditional machine learning methods. They've shown promise in evaluating quality, coherence, grammar, and style. Because of the decisions that are made based on ratings assigned by a human or a computer, the general public, however, is not ready to rely on computer-only scored assessments. The current acceptable use of machine scores is as a supplement to a human rater, either as a second rating or as providing additional information to augment the human's ability to assign a rating. Early commercial and research systems were designed and built with great attention to engineering features that align with what a human rater may be attending to when rating a performance. Modern systems, many using deep learning approaches and large language models, perform just as well or better than these feature-based learning systems. And there's a debate right now about the use of these black box systems and their lack of transparency or interpretability. Most scoring systems are designed, of course, to mimic a human assigning a score and providing feedback. So in this debate, traditional machine learning systems that use linguistic features selected by humans have been accepted already as a means of scoring. However, these systems do not score text exactly the same way as a human rater does. For example, many of the linguistic features are surface features or calculations of occurrences of language. Humans do not, for example, count the number of words in an essay or the number of imperfect tense verbs in order to assign their rating. So it's not really the same way as a human provides a rating. On the other side of the debate, others suggest that when you provide an algorithm with the essay and the rating, the machine can learn patterns in the text that align with the rating assigned by the human, and therefore mimicking the way that a human may read a text and assign a rating. The automated feature extraction methods may find patterns that are the same patterns that humans are finding that are not engineered specifically by a human. So this is a question of trust. We train human raters to score a text, but we do the same thing with computers, train them to score and rate a text. Yet we have different levels of trust when computers are making decisions than when humans are making decisions. Automated scoring and automated evaluation have many affordances and challenges. They can provide immediate feedback much faster than human raters. Number two, the ratings are often more consistent and objectively assigned than human raters. Ratings can scale very easily. This is important when there may not be enough human raters or when time is important. AWE systems can provide feedback to assist with individualized learning. Human raters can be used for rating tasks that scoring systems have not been developed for. And number six, similar to number four, automated systems can help with learning to write, so developing writing skills and not just providing feedback on the quality of the writing. Test takers may also feel more motivated and engaged using automated systems that help with writing development. More language learners may have access to language assessments and feedback, providing more accessibility with automated systems. Using automated systems also produces a large amount of data that can be used to analyze learner language, writing development at different levels and over different time periods. On the other hand, some of the challenges that automated scoring systems have been criticized for are not being able to understand the text the same way that a human reads. Secondly, humans may rely too much on the results produced by machines without questioning how the decisions are made. How much do we trust the results of a computer program? The type of quality of feedback may only be used to improve written production and not support learning how to write. So this is the other side of the coin from the positive affordance. Number 4, large language models have been shown to have biases. There's also resistance from educators and students from using machine scoring and also learning how to use these systems. There are also technical challenges, knowing how to use the tools appropriately. Relying on automated scoring and writing assistants could lead to dependency and skill atrophy. So what skills might humans lose by using these automated tools? There's also a cost, and this cost is not only financial, but also a cost of time to develop and learn how to use the systems. These systems are not yet widely available to all language instructors and language teachers, so accessibility and inclusivity is still an issue. And finally, reimagining teacher-student relationships is a challenge that we need to solve. I recently saw a meme that showed a student using ChatGPT to write an essay and the teacher using ChatGPT to grade the essay and give feedback. So where is the human in this transaction? At this point in 2024, it's important for humans to determine how computers behave instead of computers controlling humans. And the call for human values in computing and humans in the loop highlights this need. Humans should be involved in many aspects, for example, the development and training of an AI system, algorithm selection and adjustment to meet our expectations, oversight and control of how AI tools are used. We also need to be aware of how we interpret feedback. There's a potential for humans to trust the output too much and for computers to be too human-like. Number 5, humans need to address the limitations and biases that current systems produce. They need to be improved with guardrails and more training. Number 6, humans need to learn how to use decisions that result from AI tools. To what extent, again, can we trust these decisions? Number 7, we need to discuss ethical considerations, such as the use of private data in order to improve AI systems. And finally, humans are still needed to help other humans learn how to use AI tools appropriately and effectively. We need to keep in mind the purpose for creating AI applications for writing assessment. Will it mimic a human rater? If that's the goal, what are our expectations for the system? And how similar are those expectations with what we expect from a human rater? So let's take a look at applications in speaking assessment next. AI applications in speaking assessment are represented by the development of large-scale testing applications such as SpeechRater, Versant, LinguistSkill. Early systems were rating engines for monologic speaking tasks. Other applications focused on assessing or providing feedback on pronunciation. And more recently, we've seen research on measuring more complex constructs in dialogic speaking assessment, such as with the interactional competence elicitor. Dialogic tasks are becoming common in many, many disciplines. For example, applications in healthcare, such as Sophie, this product was designed at the University of Rochester, have designed dialogic tasks using digital avatars to assist medical doctors in practicing communication skills with patients. While practice with an actual human actor as a patient would be preferred to the current technology, digital avatars and dialogic tasks provide affordable access to specialized training for a larger number of medical professionals. This includes the dialogic task as well as a dashboard that provides feedback on the interaction. The affordances and challenges of automated speaking assessment are similar to those of writing assessment. One unique affordance of automated speech scoring, however, is anxiety reduction. That's number 6. Some test takers may feel more comfortable speaking with a computer than with a human rater. This scenario may seem at first to be inauthentic. Don't we usually speak with humans? However, it may be more common to speak with computers and avatars in our real-world activities in the future, particularly when they become more human-like. And the role of humans in speaking assessment is also similar to the role of humans in writing assessment. There are, however, directions for research that are unique to speaking assessment. It's much easier to collect written data to train an AI tool than it is to collect spoken data. So the data sets are essential to improving scoring and feedback systems. Therefore, we need to collect appropriate data sets that are representative of diverse and linguistic backgrounds for spoken language. Secondly, current synthetic speech, these are the tools that mimic human speech, are not as natural as human speakers. We're making progress, but we're not there yet. While synthetic speech or text-to-speech tools are improving, the Turing test is much more difficult to pass than with text. Not only because of the pronunciation, but also other characteristics of communication that humans have mastery over. The ability for synthetic speech to mimic different humans may make it easier to introduce spoken input in language assessments with a more variety of accents, linguistic variety, more specific contexts. One area where computers surpass humans is the ability to use multiple languages with ease. And this is true for multilingual speech recognition as well as synthetic speech in a variety of languages. And this has advantages for projects working on developing multilingual language assessments. And finally, in everyday applications, humans are expecting computers to mimic humans more and more, be more human-like. This is important. This is an important point to consider in language assessment. To what extent should computers have emotions and look like humans? Should we strive to create language tests that pass the Turing test? So we don't know if the computer is human or not. This is quickly becoming the case. Is it real? Is it fake? It's becoming difficult to tell from newer technologies. We're currently moving toward policies that require watermarking AI-generated content and images. For language assessments, isn't the goal to replicate a conversation as if the test taker were speaking with another human? Or are we creating tests that replicate speaking with a computer? Overcoming these challenges requires continued research, innovation, and interdisciplinary collaboration. Another area of research I'd like to talk about is in sign language assessment. And research in sign language assessment can be very complex using a variety of technologies, including computer vision, deep learning, natural language processing. So first of all, video recordings are captured and processed, and the computer vision then is used to analyze the video and recognize the hand gestures or the facial expressions. You can see in the image below the computer representation of hand gestures. However, hand gestures alone are not the full construct of sign language assessment. Facial expressions, eye gaze, body movements, facial movements all work together, form meaning, and must not only be recognized by a computer, but interpreted as well. Current research focuses on aspects of sign language communication, such as individual lexical items for vocabulary tests. And similar to model development for writing and speaking assessments, sign language models need a large collection of labeled images and videos to learn from. Current projects are also working on languages other than English, such as Swiss German and Arabic as a second language. And an alternative approach to using computer vision to recognize hand gestures is using specially designed gloves to measure hand positions and hand gestures. So as I mentioned, the key components of automated sign language assessment are gesture recognition, facial expression analysis, body posture, movement analysis, temporal and spatial analysis. So it can be very complex. So a few research questions that might help guide this area of research are: what are effective methods for analyzing and interpreting non-manual signals, such as facial expressions and body posture in sign language? What approaches can improve the scalability and generalizability of automated sign language assessment tools across different sign languages and dialects? How can automated assessment systems provide more meaningful, actionable feedback to learners? What are effective methods for collecting and annotating sign language data sets for training AI models? And also thinking about the user, how can the user experience design principles be applied to automated sign language assessment tools to make them more accessible and user-friendly? The next area is automated item generation. This is also benefiting from newer AI technologies such as generative AI in particular. So this task is also designed to replicate human tasks and developing test items, following a similar path from traditional methods to more modern methods. Applications are able to create multiple choice questions based on a short text. Research is also experimenting with creating mathematical word problems. These tasks could be fairly simple with today's large language models. Generative AI is now capable of generating reading passages that include specific language and its specified readability levels. Once the passage has been generated, the model can create comprehension questions based on that passage. The process for developing items begins with humans. Human specifications for the task. Then it moves to step 2, where we specify variable ranges and constraints, also specified by humans. And then the computer generates the items. And then it can provide the answer keys as well. And step 5 is also a human in the loop. The human provides quality review of all test items before they are integrated into assessments. Generative AI is capable of developing reading passages, listening passages, and now almost realistic video in very short amounts of time. And current applications are experimenting with item development in one mode at a time, but it won't be long until we have models that can create entire multimodal tests with a single prompt, albeit designed by a human. A few research questions for this area are: what methods and metrics can be developed to ensure the validity and reliability of assessment items generated through AIG systems? Number 2, in what ways can AIG systems be designed to adaptively produce assessment items that cater to individual learners' proficiency levels, learning styles, and specific educational needs? Number 3, how can biases be identified and mitigated in AIG systems to ensure fairness across diverse groups of learners, particularly in terms of language, culture, and socioeconomic background? Number 4, how can multimodal content, including images, audio, and video, be effectively integrated into AIG to create more engaging and comprehensive assessment items? Number 5, what approaches can enable AIG systems to more effectively assess creative and higher order thinking skills, requiring synthesis, evaluation, and creative problem solving? The last area I would like to talk about today is test security, more specifically remote proctoring. This application was of great interest, of course, during 2020, during the pandemic, as the whole world struggled to administer language tests remotely. So there were many testing companies that turned to remote proctoring. Duolingo English Test, TOEFL IBT Special Home Edition, and Versant were a few of the language tests that used proprietary or third-party AI technology. There are different forms of remote proctoring that include human proctors. However, for today, I'd like to focus on AI proctoring applications. So this technology, like the others, was designed to develop to mimic human tasks, human proctoring in this case. AI remote proctoring systems use a variety of techniques such as facial recognition, keystroke analysis, behavior analysis, all of which monitors the test taker during the administration to detect potential cheating and suspicious behaviors. It's designed to identify suspicious behaviors such as plagiarism, hearing unknown voices in the room, suspicious eye gaze, and flag these events for human review. This slide shows an example of a test administration for a placement test into an English language program using the remote proctoring system by the company Honorlock. AI remote proctoring systems provide information through a dashboard such as this. Human reviews any flags that were identified by the system and reviews them with the video that was recorded. You can see in this screen that the test taker is in the left screen and monitored with facial recognition throughout administration. The other window can be used to show identification, or it can be switched to show the computer screen to monitor the activity during test administration. The faces and information has been blurred on purpose for privacy. The human can also review a transcription of any spoken interaction that occurred during the administration, and any suspicious activity detected by the system would generate a flag, a timestamp, and a corresponding description of the event. This screenshot shows the dashboard with multiple test takers. The human proctor reviews the events that are flagged. You can see that there are different categories for flags. This screen shows high, medium, and there's a low flag as well. So this technology is still in development. The main advantage is that multiple test takers can be proctored in remote locations at the same time. However, a human is still needed to review the results and review the flagged events. There's still a high number of flagged false positives in the system. For instance, if test taker looks away from the screen, as many people do when they're thinking, the system may flag it as an attempt at cheating, such as looking for an answer somewhere in the room or looking at another person also in the room. Another challenge is privacy and user consent. These systems video record personal home environments. They also use biometrics such as facial recognition. Some use fingerprint scanning or keystroke logging. And we know that keystroke logging is a very controversial data collection method because it captures or could capture passwords or other sensitive information the test taker types during the administration. Another challenge is the complexity of the technology used. And this can be a challenge for low proficiency test takers. All test takers need to be able to troubleshoot connectivity issues if they have trouble logging on or trouble with the software. And the remote proctoring companies do provide assistance, but they don't have the capacity to provide assistance in all of the first languages of all the test takers, particularly if the test taker is a low proficiency test taker of English. And the final challenge is the infrastructure in remote locations. Since test takers rely on their own equipment, which requires a laptop or desktop with enough memory and computer power to run the software. It requires an internet connection with enough speed fast enough to deliver and proctor the administration. And this is a problem when Wi-Fi connection is slow or unstable. Here are a few research questions for this area. What are the most effective methods for detecting and preventing cheating in remote proctored language assessments without infringing on test takers' privacy or causing undue stress? What forms of AI can improve the reliability and validity of remote proctored language assessments, particularly in evaluating speaking and listening skills? How does the remote at-home proctoring experience impact test takers' performance in language assessments, and what strategies can minimize any negative effects? What are the methods for training remote proctors to handle technical issues, ensure test integrity, and support for test takers during language assessments? For the last section of today, I'd like to conclude with a look to the future. And new technologies hold potential for transforming language assessment, and many of these are virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, extended reality. These are similar but very different depending on their integration of the real world and the digital artifacts. Applications of these technologies for language assessment are immersive language proficiency tests, oral communication skills evaluation, such as interview simulations or cultural competency assessment. And while these technologies change the way input is delivered to the test taker, the flow of information is from the device to the test taker. Innovative language assessment, on the other hand, would include computer vision, where the flow of data is from the human to the computer. The effective computing is an area we'll see much more research in the future. This is an emerging field that focuses on understanding and incorporating emotions in assessment processes and intelligent tutoring systems. AI will be able to analyze linguistic cues, nonverbal signals, and assess learners' affective states, providing insights into their engagement, motivation, and emotional responses, and can be applied to analysis during language assessment tasks. This type of data collection is not without its challenges. However, the recent European Union AI Act has determined that this type of data collection is unacceptable risk for AI systems and should be considered a threat to people and will be banned. And this includes biometric identification and categorization of people, real-time and remote biometric identification systems such as facial recognition. So let's think again about the purpose of developing AI tools using this figure adopted from Bjornson. Consider the white circle as all of the tasks that humans are capable of. If our goal is to create systems that mimic human tasks, we would try to fill that white circle. And currently, we have a small subset represented by the black circle of tasks that computers can mimic. But another way we should be thinking is how AI technology can help humans to do more than they could without this assistance. Not just replacing humans, but augmenting human cognition and physical tasks. Keystroke logging is an example where computers can help humans learn more than they could without such technology. Generative AI is another technology with great potential in this area. Wearable devices such as augmented reality is another promising area. This imposes information digitally on the physical real world. So can you imagine being an instructor in a classroom, wearing augmented glasses and having information provided to you, such as the names of your students or information about them? This is also a potential application for raters during a simulated interview. With the augmented glasses, you can have a rubric or prompt provided to you while keeping your gaze towards your human interlocutor. This is an example of where we can see technology bringing humans together rather than separating humans. And finally, looking to the future, language assessment will be part of a digital assistant that will analyze all of our language collected through our devices. It will know how much English or French or Catalan I have read or heard or spoken over a period of time. So an AI application could analyze all of the collected data for any time period to provide not only personalized language assessment reports, but also appropriate feedback and tutorials that support language learning. So as we develop AI applications for language assessments, our perspective may change depending on if we are a test developer, a test taker, test user, or administrator. And we must understand what our current AI systems are capable of today rather than what we want them to be. But we'll get there. It'll take some time. And we need to agree whether we are creating a tool to replace humans or a digital human that can work together with humans. There are many more topics to discuss regarding AI applications. I've listed them here on this slide. Many are worth exploring in further depth. However, I'd like to conclude by stating that language assessment validation research is once again challenged to include new construct definitions with the introduction of AI technologies. One consideration is the extent to which technology is relevant to the interpretation and uses of test scores. And frameworks such as argument-based validation can help guide validation research of AI-driven language assessments to support their use in appropriate contexts. Here are a few selected references. And thank you for listening and joining me today. And before we get to any discussion or question and answer, I'd like to share information of our upcoming Artificial Intelligence Research and Applied Linguistics Conference with the theme AI in Education, Empowering Learners and Preparing Educators, which will be held in person in New York City in September 27th and 28th of this year. And if you open your camera, you can use this QR code for more information and for the call for proposals. So thank you very much for listening, and we'll open this up for questions and answers now.
Yeah, thanks so much, Erik. Okay, so we're almost at the hour mark, but we do just have a couple of questions I think we have some time for. First comes from Jim. He says, I'm concerned about the use of the 1998 goodness of pronunciation measure for pronunciation assessment, which has been disavowed by its inventor Steve Young at Cambridge because of poor accuracy and discrimination against fully intelligible accented speech, which caused Pearson Versant to develop an authentic intelligibility score in 2020 after a series of immigration-related scandals in 2017. So the question is, how can we encourage more automatic pronunciation assessment developers to score genuine intelligibility?
That's a very good question. I think this is where we have interdisciplinary approaches. So it's not just tech companies that are developing these tools, but also working with linguists and test developers and working together and raising awareness of these issues to produce more responsible and accessible and fair measures.
Thank you. And then I think we have time for a broader question before we wrap things up. What is one problem in language testing that you're the most optimistic about AI being able to help solve?
That is a very broad question. I think that the broader question here, and I think I mentioned this throughout the theme of my presentation, was the anthropomorphizing of machines and the ability of creating applications that mimic humans, not just mimic what humans can do, but mimic humans, looking like humans, sounding like humans. And I think that that is something that's going to be ubiquitous. We're going to see this everywhere. And I think in some cases it will help solve some of our issues. And on the other hand, in some cases it will cause more issues. I think that's an area of AI that is going to be throughout all of our applications, not only in language assessment, but in everything that we do.
Okay. Do we have time for one more? Can you take one more?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, so as someone deeply invested in the study of change, could you foresee a moment when AI might become indistinguishable from humans, particularly in terms of verbal behavior? That's the crux of the question. This suggests, so okay, I'll read the whole thing. They believe an intelligence embodies problem-solving capabilities, while consciousness pertains to the capacity for emotions, with suffering as a primal emotion. Language appears to be intricately linked to both intelligence and consciousness, which suggests that an AI possessing only intelligence without the capacity for emotion may not achieve or express language on par with human standards. But the question is, could AI ever develop emotions, maybe to bridge this gap? Or what are your thoughts on that?
That's a very good question, and I could speculate, but it's going to be difficult to truly understand whether it can or not. The computers are replicating humans. They're replicating the way we look, the way we sound, replicating our emotions through images, replicating our emotions through text and speech. It's never truly the same as a human. It still processes information differently. It's still mimicking. So I think that to turn that question around, rather than will the technology have emotions, I think a better question would be whether we as humans would perceive the machines to have emotions. And so it's about human perception and what we imagine is real. What is real, what is not? It's a digital avatar, something we consider now real.
It's very interesting. And I'm sure we have a lot more we could talk about. We're about at the hour mark now, so I'm gonna wrap things up. Thank you for all the questions. I'm sorry we didn't have time for all of them. Anthony, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, I was intrigued by your presentation, Erik. I have a question. What can a classroom teacher do today or in the next year or two by, in terms of applying AI in the classroom?
That's a very good question, and I think this would be another full webinar to answer this question. But I think that some of the attempts at scoring essays are replacing, the cognitive offloading, replacing what teachers do. But a better use would be, for example, if an instructor grades the essay or task and then uses AI to help with producing the feedback. Or another way would be to think through lesson planning and think through the cognitive processing that's needed to design lessons. So using AI as an assistant rather than asking it to replace the tasks that a teacher does. I think that's where we might see a lot of improvement, is not asking it to computer to do something for us, but to work with us, as I mentioned in my augmenting our cognition. How can we help it brainstorm with us and think of ideas and help us improve our human capacity in the classroom?
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Well, thanks, Erik. I think that brings us to the end of our webinar for today. Thank you all for attending the webinar, and thank you, Sophie, for making all the arrangements.
Of course.
Thank you very
And I
much.
shared the YouTube channel in our chat if anybody wants to see. And thank you, Erik, very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.